U.S. Drought Monitor from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln shows a drastic difference between the eastern 3/4 of the country and the western quarter. The former is doing extremely well for moisture, while the latter has seen much less than adequate precipitation. Nebraska Extension forage specialist Bruce Anderson says even if farmers and ranchers are in a situation with abundant precipitation, they should always have a drought plan in place for pastures and ranges. We recently talked with Bruce and asked him to explain why that's so important.
Well, I think drought really kind of changes a lot of our perspective of things, and unless we're prepared for it when it does start to occur, we can have some real serious consequences, both from the health of our animals, the health of our grazing lands, and our economic health.
Tell me what the first steps are to take for either a landlord or a tenant when you start talking about drought.
Well, I think one of the first steps that often this time of the year we need to be taking is taking a look at our lease. If we are renting land, the way that lease is structured is going to influence how we react to that drought. For example, if we just make a payment, pay so many dollars to rent ground for the grazing season, well, who's going to make a decision as to when the animals get pulled off of that pasture if it does turn into a drought? If they stay on there too long, that's going to damage the pasture, bring on weeds, cause all sorts of long-term problems that maybe the landlord doesn't like to see. Similarly, if these animals stay on too long, they don't have enough good feed, they can have animal health problems, performance problems, so the livestock owner has some difficulties with that. So we need to take a look at how we're going to make some of those decisions if we are dealing with rented land types of situations.
How much more challenging can a widespread drought be rather than just a small-scale drought?
Well, I think that's a good question to ask, and something that we do need to consider, because if we've only got a small local area that has drought and we're facing a feed shortage for our own livestock, if it's just a small area, we usually can find feed fairly readily close at hand that we can feed our livestock. The hay price will probably be something reasonable, maybe a little elevated, but not totally out of hand. If instead we've got a widespread drought, something like we had back in 2012 over a large portion of the country, nobody has feed for sale. If you find any of it, it's extremely expensive, and so then you decide you're going to sell your animals. Well, everybody else is selling animals already, and so the price is severely depressed. So we need to be ahead of the game, beating everybody else to making decisions relative to that in order to keep our livestock in good shape, our livestock enterprise still profitable, or at least hanging on for better days.
Is there a recommendation as to how much hay a producer should have on hand?
Well, that really is going to depend a great deal on individual hay supplies. You know, I know a lot of people that if they're feeding a lot of hay as a major portion of what they're using for the wintertime, they may try to have something like 2 tons of hay for every cow for the full winter time. Others that have a lot of winter grazing opportunities, whether it's on winter range or on corn stalks, they may only need to have maybe a ½ ton to feel comfortable that they're going to get by. But no matter how much we may keep to try and take care of the animals, oftentimes the leftover hay that remains after the winter feeding season can be put to good use for dealing with drought situations, such as feeding that hay a little longer in the springtime. That lets the pasture grow a little bit more, gets a little bit ahead, more feed there for the animals, and that hay and feed is going to carry them into the summertime longer in hopes that maybe we do get some rain or we can make some adjustments in livestock numbers more easily.
Did we learn anything important from 2012 about how long we're supposed to leave cattle on that grass, or how that grass does recover from drought?
Well, I think we are learning in some cases that the grass has not yet recovered from some of that drought, especially when it gets to be abused so badly that a lot of perennial weeds start to invade into those areas, and especially so in areas where maybe it's cost prohibitive to do a lot of herbicide type of control of those weeds. It takes a long time and a lot of careful management in order to bring those grasslands back into good shape. So really looking at our resource and being careful that we don't abuse it to too severe of an extent can pay long-term dividends rather than long-term pains.
On the Market Journal website, we'll link to more resources on drought management for the pasture or range, including sample drought plans for actual ranges throughout the Great Plains.